back.
Yeah, right?
So the day is here. We have our special guest back with us. He is fixing my mistake. You are listening to GPS to God. We're glad that you're here. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, all that kind of stuff. And you might hear some guests once. You might hear them twice. We might hear them twice, and you might hear them once. Who knows? But
Take two.
Podcast at parkwaybc.net. Make sure you reach out. So, Chris, one thing you don't know, we'll get into an introduction. Well, I guess we need to do introduction first.
Right.
So
Let people know who the guest is.
Yes.
It's been a contest. So I'm going to explain the contest after we introduce our guest. So we have with us, let me get to my notes. This is going to take a second. He broke Jessie Owens' long jump record at the Ohio State.
There we go.
Yeah.
11.
Starting off on the good foot. Yes, we are.
11-time All-American in track and field. Played 7 seasons in the NFL and played in the Super Bowl. 8 seasons. Oh, I forget. I don't count that one jersey you got behind you, but
I know, yeah.
Played 8 seasons in the NFL, 7 with the Tennessee Titans, and played in Super Bowl 34. He is shaping the next generation as a track and field coach and a football coach at Montgomery Bell Academy, who also plays in the state semifinals this Friday. We'll get to that in a minute.
That's awesome.
And also goes beyond sports and mentoring those young men. You can check out his social media for weekly inspirational messages. He's on Facebook. That's Chris Sanders on Facebook, or on Instagram at 81_ways. And we have the one and only Mr. Chris Sanders with us. Thanks for being here again.
Hey, man, I appreciate you, man. It must have been real good to bring me back.
It was really good for us. Unfortunately, the fans just to get to see once. But
no problem. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We're the biggest fans here. So since you were here last time, and you know the story, I didn't hit record, and you were gracious enough to come back. But we turned that into a contest for our fans. So they get to – we've been putting guesses out there. We let them know you played in the Super Bowl and had them send in guesses. Then we gave them another clue you played for the Titans.
Okay.
Let them send in guesses. Then the last clue was we let them know you were an offensive player.
Yes.
So we were giving away gift cards, and we're still looking for – we had Jerry Rice guess this week, and I said that's he didn't play in Super Bowl 34.
No,
he did not play for the Titans, but it was a good guess.
I got a question. I'm going to ask you guys a question. If you can get this, what record do I hold in the NFL that still stands today?
I know the answer, but I'm going to give my man Ryan. Do you know?
I do know the answer.
Oh, Stefano, do you know?
I do not.
Oh, take a guess. You'll never get it. Take a guess.
Don't laugh. Just don't laugh.
Let me see.
Hey, it's a record. Who cares?
As long as it's a record, I'm in the record books, and I don't think it'll ever be broken.
That's right.
I can't even imagine.
It's an offensive stat, but not for receiving.
Not for receiving. Fumbles?
No.
Close.
Fumbles.
Yeah. Chris, I'll let you share the news.
Drop.
Yeah, I got minus 36 yards in rushing.
Most negative career rushing yards.
How do you get that?
That's all blocking.
That's all blocking.
Sacked by Taylor when I played for the Tennessee Titans. I got sacked by Taylor twice. He used to play for Miami.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Jason Taylor.
And I'm still mad at him this day. So if I see him walking around, if I see him in the grocery store, I'm going to tackle him so I get my yards back.
As you should. As you should.
Hey, you give us a call. We'll come be back up.
Absolutely.
At least a witness, so we can witness for you that you got your yards back.
100%.
So, Chris, thanks for being on. We were very excited. We are not going to repeat the first interview we did. We couldn't if we wanted to, but you are going to be excited. Stay on your toes, and that is an intentional reference to our fan. Be on your toes because it's going to be lively, a lot of emotion, a lot of energy, and on your toes, Chris. That's kind of a hidden story. You want to tell the people about that?
Absolutely. I mean, like the normal person walks flat-footed, but I don't think I'm normal. I walk on my tippy toes. So my nickname is Tippy Toes or Tip. You know, when I played for the Ohio State University, and even when some of my coaches that I play with or, coach with, they call me Tip because I walk on my toes. I can't walk flat-footed. As I came out of my mother's womb, I started walking on my toes at that moment. So it's, even though I look funny walking, but actually it helped me in a lot of things.
It's going back to his Instagram, 81 Ways. That was his number, his jersey number in the NFL, number 81. So make sure you look him up on his social media. and his Facebook. Do you post your messages on Facebook and Instagram?
Yes, I do. I do it at 1:30 p.m. Central, and then I'll put it 2:00 Central on Instagram.
So make sure you're checking that out on his social media. It is great. I've not seen all of them. I've seen a bunch of them though. So that's a great weekly message for all of you listeners out there. So make sure you're checking him out. But we're going to get into sports and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to start with your spiritual life, and then we're going to talk about how that has carried you through so many different sports things and then post-playing career. But can you give us some details of how God has been present in your life?
I mean, I went through a lot of trials and tribulations, and we always say this all the time. We grew up in the church. We went to church. I did all the religious stuff, but I really didn't know who he was. And it's kind of like this. Just imagine me having you having my rookie card, but you never met me, but you know a whole bunch of stats. And that's and you wouldn't know me until you actually knew me. But that's kind of how I was with Jesus. Is I knew a whole bunch of stats. I knew that he died on the cross. I knew that he healed the sick, but I didn't have a personal relationship with him. And then in 1995, I was one of those guys that came in the league. I was leading in yards per catch, and everything was going great on the field. But the thing about it is, every time I would go home, I felt empty. And in 1995, my end of my rookie season, a guy named Les Steckel, my receiver coach, and Sherman Smith, the receiver coach for the Tennessee Titans /Oilers, really led me to the Lord. And I'm going to tell you something, that's one of the most prized possessions that I'll never forget, because the thing about it is, football was what I did, but it wasn't who I was, because football started to become my identity. But the thing about it is, I had to understand that my life and my purpose was bigger than just being a football player. God used that platform, and I'm going to continue to use it. It's a blessing. But my purpose was living for my daddy, which is Jesus.
One of the big things that we all like is NFL. Playing in the NFL, that's the biggest sport in America.
Yeah.
What Americans call real football. The rest of the world will tell us we're crazy. But game day.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about game day in the NFL and the excitement of that, but then also maybe some struggles, kind of behind-the-scenes struggles that players face that we may not know about?
There's a lot of stuff that we faced. A lot of football players don't really talk about it, and I know a lot of guys know a guy named A.J. Brown. He played for the Tennessee Titans. He came out and talked about his depression. There's a lot of guys that go through this, a lot of guys that go through depression, go through anxiety, and go through these things. We as, big men are afraid to talk about these things. When I went in the field, when I got on the field, sometimes I was afraid. But the one thing that I had to understand, that God gave me my strength and God gave me the power to overcome those things in my life. And, I remember about 14, 15 years ago, I know this is kind of the same thing on the lines of what I'm talking about, what you guys are talking about, but 15 to 16 years ago, I went through a tough divorce. I went through some situations that were tough. I lost everything. My kids were living in California. I went through divorce, and I was at a point in my life that I wanted to end my life because it was so unbearable. But the one thing I love about Jesus is he took me out of the pit and gave me a purpose. And I like to use this illustration. I remember we were playing the Buffalo Bills. And as we were playing the Buffalo Bills, I'm in the huddle, Derek Mason's in the huddle, Eddie George is in the huddle. And, Stevie there calls a play, and he calls a play to Eddie George. And as a receiver, I'm mad because I want the ball. So as I run out there, I got so mad that I told the defensive back that Eddie George was getting the ball. He was like, really? Oh. So, like that. So all of a sudden, I'm blocking the guy, and all of a sudden I see Eddie George, and he's running. And I look back, and here comes Big 27. 27 is a big old guy with a little bitty head, just a big, gigantic head. So as I'm blocking this guy, I see Eddie George, and he knocks me down. And I'm sitting there, face mask turned this way, snot bubbles in my nose. But there's one thing that I'll never forget, is Eddie George saw me laying there, and he picked me up, and he got me some Gatorade, and I got back in the game. See, that's a perfect picture of how Jesus is when sin knocks you down, when insecurities knock you down, when depression knocks you down. Jesus steps out of heaven, picks you up, gets you his word, and he gets you right back in the game. And that's a perfect picture of how much I love Jesus, because he saw me laying there. He saw me in pain, but he didn't leave me there. He cleaned me up, gave me his purpose, got his word, and I got right back in the game.
So we kind of teased the people here. We gave them a little taste of the NFL. We're going to come back to that because we still got the big one, the Super Bowl to go over.
There we go.
Right? But we're gonna back it up now. We just draw them in. That's called a tease in the business, Ryan. It's called a tease.
Right.
So backing up a little bit, Can you tell us where you're from and where you grew up?
I am from Denver, Colorado, where it snows a lot. I mean, it's mountains, it snows, it'll be 60 degrees one day, 80 the next day. Then all of a sudden you have a blizzard. That's kind of what I went through. Grew up in Denver, Colorado. Grew up watching John Elway, the Three Amigos. Who else? Tom Jackson. John Elway. I grew up watching those guys. So I'm from Denver, Colorado.
And how did a Denver kid playing in the snow end up at the Ohio State?
That is a great question. This is how it actually happened. Is the head coach that coached me in high school, his cousin was the wide receiver coach for the Ohio State University named Gene Huey. And our coach was telling him how good I was and this and that. He came and saw me and they actually offered me a scholarship. But a funny story is I actually was going to go to Arizona State because they were going to let me go both ways. But this is what changed my mind. I know this sounds kind of goofy. But as I went down there, you go down there for recruiting, and one girl said I look cute. And she said, are you going to Ohio State? I'm like, yeah. So all she wrote. It was all because of her. And then when I got to campus, I never saw her again.
Crazy how women get us every time.
Wrapped around a little finger. It's a great recruiting tool right there. So Ohio State.
The Ohio State. Sorry.
I had to do it so you could correct me. I did that one on purpose. So for those of you that don't know, anytime you reference the Ohio State, you can't leave off that the. It's got to be there. So I made that.
I got to tell you the story, too. The reason why it's the Ohio State University, we actually started, me, Eddie George, Joey Galloway, Terry Glenn. We started that in 1992 is when they interviewed us. We said the Ohio State University, but the reason why we say that is because there's so many teams in Ohio. You got University of Ohio, Ohio University, Akron of Ohio, Cincinnati of Ohio. So when we say the, all those other schools don't matter. So that's kind of where that, came out of.
So he was a little more kind this time. The first time we did this interview, I left off the, and Chris got me, but deservedly so. I knew better.
Absolutely.
But at the Ohio State, you were an athlete. Football and track and field.
Yes.
Can you tell us what it's like being a star, a recruited high school kid coming to a big school and playing sports and the trials you faced in that?
I mean, it was tough. I mean, the pressure of performing, the pressure, to actually get on the field because there's so many athletes. But when I first got there, I was behind the 8-ball. And the reason why I say I was behind the 8-ball is when I went there, I had to sit out my first year. I was academically ineligible. My ACT score was real low. And the first day I stepped on campus, I met Joey Galloway and I met all the coaches. But then I show up to lift weights one day. And I remember this. I had my bag in my hand and everybody's getting lockers. And I'm the only one they couldn't have a locker because it's an NCAA rule. So every day, I know this sounds kind of weird, but I had to put my clothes by the coach's urinal every day. So just imagine going through that, seeing that, and then also when I'm lifting weights with the guys, I mean, you're talking about Lonzo Spellman, Jeff Cochran, all these big guys that are squatting like 400 and 500 pounds, and I'm barely squatting 120 pounds. So I'm getting laughed at. So when you talk about going to a situation to where you're thrown and you're learning how to be a man and trying to figure things out and, find out what's going on, the first thing is you put your stuff by the coach's urinal, and then all of a sudden you're getting laughed at. So now I went through adversity, but the one thing that I learned through adversity is that, man, it doesn't matter where you start, it's where you finish with. Because here's a guy that had 11 on his ACT score. Now he graduates in education with a 3.1. Here's a guy that didn't have a locker. Now he's getting drafted third round, the 67th pick in the NFL. So the reason why I share those stories is I want the listeners to understand is it's not where you start, it's where you finish. It's just overcoming the adversity, overcoming the pain, overcoming the shame to understand that, something big can happen for you. And I remember my second year playing football, I got a chance to play like one or two plays in the first game. And then all of a sudden I'm running the route and I get hurt. So now I lose another year. But here's the great part about that year is my blessing was waiting for me at that time and I didn't know it. And I'm going to tell you why. I hurt my knee, so I had to sit out. And then all of a sudden I went off a track. And the first track meet I went to, I jumped 24.11. The second meet, I jumped 25.10. And then the third meet, I broke Jessie Owens' long jump record at Iowa State. And it still stands to this day. So what I'm saying is trust the process and understand that there's great things waiting for you.
And even when you are literally in the toilet, as you are, you know, God still has a plan for our lives, and He knows where He's going to carry us. But we may have some growing to do before we get there.
Yeah, I had to understand what trust looks like. I had to understand that, you know, the battle's not mine. My job is just to show up and trust Him at all time. And here's the wild part about it is I wasn't even saved at that time. I mean, I wasn't even saved at the time, and God had His hands on me the whole time. It says in Romans, I think it's Romans 8, it said God demonstrated His love that while we were sinners, He died for us. While I was a knucklehead, He still blessed me. So now I'm serving Him, and I love Him even more because He didn't have to love me when I was all in my mess, but He took me out of that situation, gave me a purpose, and He's doing great things in my life.
You're talking about how you had to put your stuff next to the urinals and everything, but I mean, someone coming in new to college and everything, I feel like that would be a Debbie Downer moment right there. You'd be like, man, I got to put my stuff here. And I'm watching all these guys that are getting out there and getting to just go do it right away. And, I mean, that's commitment. You're sticking with it and still going at it. And, you know, obviously with God with you, it makes it just that much easier. So these guys out there, it's just crazy.
I mean, I wanted to quit. Don't get me wrong. I wanted to quit. And I remember this is a time where I just had enough. I mean, I was just like, okay, Mom, I'm coming home. This was my senior year. I had 0 touchdowns. I barely played, and I'm in my senior year. And the year before that, the coaches wanted me to go to spring ball, but I couldn't do spring ball because I was running track because I was ranked in the world. I can't just leave them to go play football.
Right.
So now we play our first game, and they start a junior over me. And I'm like, I'm done. I said, we were playing San Diego State, and the junior gets in, he catches a couple of balls, and then Joey Galloway has a phenomenal game. And I'm on the plane, and I was contemplating, I'm done. I said, I can't do this anymore with tears in my eyes. And as I went back to my dorm room, I called my mom. I said, Mom, I'm finished. I said, I can't. This is just too much. And my mom, with her soft voice, she just said, baby, just trust the process, and everything's going to be all right. Now, here's the cool part about the whole thing. It's cool, but it's a little disappointing. I remember we were headed to practice that Monday, and I'm riding with Joey Galloway, and we're sitting there. We're kind of acting silly on our way to practice, and all of a sudden, there's a whole bunch of cameras waiting at the facilities. And as they're waiting at the facilities, I see Joey Galloway put his head down, and I'm like, uh-oh, what is going on? So Joey gets out the car. I said, man, what is going on? So they started asking Joey questions. They said, how do you feel about being suspended? And Joey got suspended for 2 games because he took money from a booster. So now, all of a sudden, that kid that didn't have any touchdowns, all of a sudden has to be inserted back into the lineup. Now I'm back in the lineup. First game, 2 touchdowns against Houston. Next game, 2 touchdowns against Wisconsin. Next game, 2 touchdowns against Purdue. Next game, 1 touchdown against Pittsburgh. So what I'm saying is I was staring at a situation, but God didn't keep me there because my blessing was waiting right there.
So you graduate college, get drafted.
Yes. In
the 3rd round, begin your career as a professional football player. How long after that process was it before you were saved?
Into my rookie season.
Into your rookie season.
The funny part about that whole year is I was crushing the NFL. I mean, I was leading the league in yards per catch with 23.5 yards, 23.5. After 4 games, it was 30.5. I mean, I was lighting the NFL on fire. But here's the thing about it is every time I would go home, I felt empty. And like, is this it? You know, I mean, I had everything in my hand. I had money, I had the fame, I had, you know, this phenomenal rookies tearing up the league. I'm leading yards per catch. I'm starting in the NFL, but I just felt empty. You know, I'm like, is this it? Because we know what the NFL stands for. It stands for not for long, because you ain't gonna be there that long. So, you know, I just got to the position to where, man, it's gotta be more to life than just playing football. Listen, God made football, so I don't want to make it a bad thing. God put football in this world and gave me an opportunity to play, so I'm never knocking it. But what I had to understand is God wanted me to love Him more than I love my profession.
Once you became saved, was there like a group? You know, you hear about teams that have like a group of other fellow brothers that you could lean on in groups and everything like that. Did y'all have that then when during that
absolutely.
time?
That's a great question. And one thing that we did is we kept each other accountable. It was me, Derek Mason, Bruce Matthews. It was another cornerback that came with us. And what we would do is when we were on the road to keep each other accountable, we would have Bible studies in our room, or we'd go to somebody's room and just make sure us four was there until meeting time. So, we had guys to keep us accountable. We had guys that loved each other, and we had that group to where we can depend on. I love Bruce Matthews. Bruce Matthews was a funny dude. He was funny. And then we had Derek Mason, who was crazy. Then we had Aaron Kinney. That's what it was, Aaron Kinney. We had Bible studies, and I think it was every Monday we had a big old Bible study at one of the guys' house.
That's awesome.
For those that don't know, Bruce Matthews, offensive lineman, Hall of Fame player, right? He's in the Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame player.
Really amazing.
And offensive linemen don't get much credit, but he was one of the best in history, obviously.
Absolutely.
But also, he was a good athlete, just all-around athlete, right?
You hear stories of terrible athlete.
Well, you hear I've heard stories of like training camp where he's catching 10 footballs, catching them off the jugs machine.
Terrible athlete. Terrible.
Just like a wide receiver. Just like a wide receiver.
Here's what made him so special is he mastered his technique. He was flawless in his technique. Flawless is know where the guy was going to step. Flawless in using his hand. Flawless with his feet. But athletic-wise, looked like he had 2 knees and five elbows. It was terrible. But here's what he did: is he took pride in what he did. He worked hard. He was a great teammate, and that's why he's a Hall of Fame. I watched him. I'm like, how is he doing this? He knows exactly what guys are going to do if they twist or stunt. Exactly what technique these guys were going to do. I watched him thoroughly destroy Bruce. Was it not Bruce Matthews? Bruce. They played for the Bills.
Bruce Smith?
Bruce Smith. Oh, he destroyed Bruce Smith. And Bruce Smith was stronger, bigger, faster, but he knew exactly what he was doing and just, ran through his lips.
I think Bruce Matthews made the Pro Bowl at every offensive line position. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. He was smart, man.
Unheard of.
Crazy.
That is
crazy. He was the jokester of the team. We'll be playing a game, and the guy's running around looking for his helmet. Where's my helmet? And he's hiding it. He's like, I got it here. That's kind of stuff he would do. Or in practice, he'll put like Pepto-Bismol and syrup in your helmet and put flour, and you put it on. It's just one of those guys that you love to be around. Guys that inspired you to be great. And, that year we went to the Super Bowl in 1999 to watch him cry when he was holding up the trophy, to watch him cry, to be like, man, I finally made it all these years in the NFL. It was a beautiful, beautiful sight.
So you touched on it. Let's go with the big game, the Super Bowl, 1999 against the Rams. What is that experience like? Of course, we all watch it on TV. We see the press conference and just kind of the lead up to the game the week before. But what is that like as a player? Different experience. How is it different from regular season? And then stress level and how you carried that through faith as well.
It was crazy. It was really, really crazy. I think the best moment that I had is when they had media day. It was incredible. And what they did is like you saw one camera in there, like, man, is this it? All of a sudden they opened up the door. You're talking about 4,000 cameras, just people from Russia, China, all different places. People interviewing me, and I didn't even know the language. I'm just talking like, okay, that's how it's done. But it was a great moment. But another moment that I really, really love is when I walked out of the tunnel, and as I'm running down the field because I'm screaming, and usually I'm a quiet guy when the game ends, but the adrenaline was flowing so much. And all I kept hearing was Chris. So I ran down to the end zone, and there was about 25 people with a number 81 jersey on. I'm like, whoa. I was like, okay, let me go get my camera. I had this big old VHS. I'm like trying to run out with it to try to take it because then my battery died. So I'm like, dang. But that moment was awesome. But I think, too, is, just watching, Jeff Fisher and Floyd Reese and Bud Adams and, things like that. See these guys work hard to actually get to that pinnacle. And then another moment that I really, really love is I actually saw one of my favorite singers was Tina Turner. And as I walked by Tina Turner, I said, hey, how you doing? She's like, how you doing, baby? I was like, yeah. And then she kissed me on the cheek. I'm like, I have arrived. That was a good moment. But, again, you kind of get back to your question, too, is, how did my faith, kind of help me with that situation is, the Bible says in 2 Timothy 1:7, he said he's not giving a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Because before that game, I was afraid. I was nervous. I felt like one leg weighed 600 pounds. The other one was like 800. I'm trying to run routes, feeling heavy. But I just calmed down and said, Lord, I'm trusting in you. And then next thing you know, it was kind of like a regular game.
He's over here just throwing stuff out. Tina Turner, yeah, she kissed me on the cheek.
Name drop.
This is fantasy camp over here, fantasy camp.
Yeah.
But so to get to the Super Bowl earlier that year in the playoffs, you were the part of the Titans, obviously, that had another miracle play to get there. One of the biggest plays in NFL history in the Music City Miracle. And for those listeners who may not know what that is, Google Music City Miracle, and you'll see one of the greatest football plays ever. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It was crazy. Okay, number one, Kevin Dyson wasn't even supposed to be in the game. Derek Mason was. And then number two, everybody keeps saying that we practice that in practice. We ain't practiced that not one time. We do that up on the side. I don't know where, when they practice it, I don't know where I was, but we never practiced it. But that was a great moment. I mean, it was really cool. And here's the cool part about the whole situation. First of all, they kicked it to Lorenzo Neal. Lorenzo Neal's about 5'2". He wrestled in college. He's a 4-time NCAA championship. He has the worst hands in America. I mean, it's like try to catch with elbows. I mean, it's awful. He's terrible. They kicked it to him. He catches the ball. Then they throw it. Then he gives it to Frank Wycheck. Frank Wycheck has the worst arm in practice. He tries to throw it. It's like, it's terrible. And then you have Kevin Dyson. It ain't even supposed to be in the game. And they draw it up on the sideline, and it works. So what I look at that, and I look at that picture, is God can take something that looks so foolish and turn it into a miracle. Because on the sidelines, I was talking to Yancey Thigpen, I was talking to Isaac Bird about the last 3 plays that we're going to run because we thought the game was over, but there was still 16 seconds left on the clock. And as I'm talking to Yancey Thigpen, I look down, I'm like, why is Dyson running down the field? What are we doing? All of a sudden he went in the end zone, and when he ran the end zone, the crowd was going crazy. And then the referees went to see if it was legal or not. You could hear a pin drop. So I'm sitting there, and he walks out, and he says, the play is good. Man, it was insane. I mean, people were on the highway beeping the horns when I'm driving home. I get back to my cul-de-sac. There's about 150 people congratulate me. So it's one of those moments that you never forget that felt surreal.
How was that entire I know you were drafted by Houston, started there in Houston, and then you moved, came up here to Nashville. Y'all had to play at Vanderbilt for a year, then finally get it to, Adelphia, I guess, back then.
Wow.
Trivia.
How was that entire process for you, just coming into the NFL for a couple of years?
I was a young player, so we could have played in somebody's backyard. It didn't matter to me.
Okay.
But the transition, it was tough because we were sitting in meetings one day, and all of a sudden we was like, okay, you got 2 weeks to go find a house in Tennessee. We're like, what? So we go to Tennessee, and we play in Memphis. We play in Memphis, and when we're playing in Memphis, I'll never forget, we're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. We walk in there, it's all Steelers fans, and we're getting booed, and we're supposed to have the home team. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So after that, we go to Vanderbilt, same thing. We're playing the San Diego Chargers. It's all San Diego Charger fans, and we're getting booed. So I'm like, man, is this what it's all about? Mm-hmm. But when we moved into that stadium, when we played the Cincinnati Bengals the first game, and we won 36-35, I said, this feels different. And that year we went 13-3. We beat Indy the first round. We beat Bills the first round. We beat Indy the second round, and then we beat Jacksonville. Yeah. And it was unbelievable.
Were you married at that time? Did you have a family?
Yeah, I did. I had I was married, and I had a son, CJ.
Was that transition harder with the family, do you think?
No, it wasn't too bad. I mean, we were just excited to get up out of there. I mean, it didn't matter to me. We went and found a house in like 2 days, and the transition for me, it didn't matter. I think it was harder for the older guys that played in Houston for a long, long time. It was kind of tough for them. But to me, I was only in Houston for like 2 years.
Gotcha.
Talking about your son, CJ, for those that don't know, Chris's son has been an actor before, and there's a movie called Ray about Ray Charles, and Chris's son was in that and played a young Ray Charles in that movie. Can you talk about your son, your child, anyone's child being an actor. How did that come about for you specifically?
It was a miracle. I'll be honest. It was a miracle because CJ was 7 or a little younger than that. And we didn't know, we weren't even thinking about putting him in acting. We just never came up. But the producer was going around and trying to, find people to play in the Ray Charles movie. They was trying to find a kid, that looked like Ray Charles that played the instrument, but he saw CJ's face in a magazine. And it's like, well, where's this kid at? Has he ever played in any roles or anything? It was like, nah, we ain't doing no acting. We denied it. It's like, well, just put him on tape and tape him and send a VHS tape to New Orleans. And they're like, who is this kid? So they flew him down to New Orleans to have him meet Jamie Foxx, have him meet Taylor Hackford, the producer of the movie. And when he went down there, they gave him the movie just like that. Wow. And that's how that happened. Never had any acting experience. And that movie, and he doesn't understand the magnitude of that movie. He played a legend.
Yes.
I mean, it comes on every year.
Yes.
And and the funny thing about it is he was up for an award. He was going against Don Cheadle for supporting actor. Don Cheadle, Jamie Foxx, wow. Morgan Freeman. You got this little kid at the bottom with a little bitty afro going against like this dude. And he did his job, man. Never had any acting experience. Once he got the job, then they helped him with his acting. But man, it's funny because me and my son was talking about it today. I said, man, do you understand what you did? He was like, yeah. I said, as long as you live, they will always be talking about that movie. That's one of the best movies of all time. And you had a chance to represent and act an icon, which is Ray Charles.
Yeah.
I don't know that any quality acting is super easy, but that was a hard role for him.
It was.
As a child, and maybe it was better that he didn't understand, he was just playing maybe, but for those that haven't seen that movie, he's playing Ray Charles as Ray loses his sight.
Yeah.
And so CJ has makeup on that's kind of, looks like his eyes are pussing up and different things, which adds another layer of difficulty for him. And that, it is an awesome role. If you haven't seen that, check that out. It's a pretty good movie. And also shows trials and tribulations of fame and how Satan can use that to drag people down. And not the vast majority of us are not going to be famous, but someone like Chris, which is why we want to have him on to talk about, the how Satan works against us, because the same things that Chris has gone through translate into our lives and translate into things that we can apply as well.
Yeah, the thing about it is we got to understand that the Bible says this. It says in Hosea 4:6, it says, my people perish for the lack of knowledge. The reason why, we fail sometimes and we don't walk according to God's will is because we don't know who we are. It's about understanding who you are. And the way you know who you are is getting in his word. That's why it's kind of like this. If I go lift weights every day and I go to school every day, a high school that I coach at, and I never eat, eventually I'm going to wither away and I'm going to die. And that's the same thing as a lot of people go on with their lives and do all these things, but they never eat the word of God, and then they die spiritually. And I'm just at a point in my life, and I'm not trying to preach too hard, but I'm just at a point in my life that I can't live without it. I just can't. I can't go a day or 2 days without getting this word and understanding, man, there's promises. And that's a love letter to me. That's a love letter to you. There's promises that I can overcome adversity, that I can overcome depression, I can overcome doubt, I can overcome insecurity, I can overcome all these things. Why? Because our daddy already overcame it for us already. So that's what makes this thing so good, man.
And you touched on it earlier. You're NFL player. You're coming to the end of your career. You've made a lot of money, and then you go through a divorce. What is that? How did you recover from that? What are some of the steps that you took to get over that depression and pull you out on the other side with a stronger faith?
I think the one thing that I had to do to get out of it, I had to get out of isolation. Because the one thing was, especially me as a man, we try to hide and don't want to deal with it sometimes. But what I had to do is I had to get men in my life to help me and show me who I was in Christ. A lot of times we talk about God and we just never, when we get in a situation, we don't know how to get out of it. But Jesus gives us always, it says the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But the thing about it is, God came that we may have life. And how do we have life? Through his word and surrounding yourself with people that's going to pull you out of your situation. It's kind of like this. I remember watching Rocky, and I love Rocky. Rocky is one of my favorite movies. But I remember, and I think it was in Rocky 2, Rocky was just getting beat up. I mean, just getting pummeled. And as he's fighting, he's in this ring, and he's in this ring. Not Polly, but his trainer was on the side.
Mick.
Like, hey, Rock, just one more round. But then if you look on the side, everybody's telling him to stay down. But on the left side, his trainer said, hey, just one more round, Rock, just one more round. See, that's a perfect picture of Jesus, is when you're getting knocked out. Jesus is saying, come on, son and daughter, just one more round. But see, the thing about it is the battle's already been won. That's why he's saying one more round, because the battle's already been won.
Who did he fight in Rocky 2, Ryan?
Apollo Creed.
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah, he wasn't going to get it.
There was my lifeline right there.
Yeah.
The last thing that helped me too is this is what really helped me too is, I mean, I know I give a lot of stories, but you know.
That's what you're here for.
No. But I remember watching wrestling. You ever watch wrestling?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
They have tag team, right? And, you know, the guys in the ring, and it's always the guys in the ring that's just getting beat up. But then the guys in the ring, there's a guy outside the ring that is putting his hand over the ring and said, listen, hey, dude, all you got to do is touch my hand and I'll get it in the ring and I'll fight your battles. And all of a sudden he crawls over there and he touches his hand. And then the guy that's losing gets out and the guy jumps in and he beats the other guy up. But see, that's what Jesus wants us to do, is we're in a ring of depression. We're in a ring of doubt. We're in a ring of insecurities. We're in a ring of all these things. And we're continuing getting beat up. And Jesus is just saying, all you got to do is touch my hand. And when I touch his hand and say, God, you got it, he says, you get out of the ring and let me fight the battle that's already been won. That's what really helped me through it.
And I'm sure just having those accountability partners that you have, because Satan preys on us when we are isolated by ourselves. That's when he's there and the strongest. Obviously, there's strength in numbers, and probably having those accountability partners that you had definitely helped get you through that. So,
I mean, it's kind of like this too. Just imagine now. Oh, I just got this picture. This is really cool. Just imagine I'm a lion, right? Mm. If I'm a lion and I'm a cub lion, I think it's called a cub. But just imagine, knowing that I'm a lion. That means I'm the baddest thing in the jungle. But if I'm not in the pack and I start to wander off, it doesn't matter if I'm a lion or not. Somebody's coming to get me. Mm. But if I'm in the pack, that means, man, you can't attack me. Why? Because I'm covered. Yeah. So even though I'm a Christian and I love God, but if I isolate myself, enemies coming. But if I surround myself with people that's going to encourage me, then I can't lose. Mm-hmm.
Surround yourself with people that will build up your faith.
Absolutely.
So you made it through a time of depression. Mm-hmm. Post-football career, you've moved into coaching. And coaching high school students, high school athletes. For those, we're going to get into some of the inspirational stuff and how you're transitioning them from boys to men. Mm. But people that are now have high school athletes and they are being recruited for college, mm-hmm. What experience or what advice can you give them from your experience of the recruitment process and finding a place that they can fit in?
I mean, the recruiting it's getting crazy now. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's really bananas. I think if I'd have did it a little different, I would have sought God on where he wants me to be. I kind of think that a lot of times we kind of do it on where we think we should go. And I know this sounds cliche or, churchy or whatever, but I would see God in that whole situation, because you're going to a place to where, if you go to a place where you feel out of place, you got to be there for 4 and 5 years. I mean, that's when that depression sits in. That's when you get homesick. That's when all those things happen. Mm-hmm. But if you go to a place where God strategically puts you, that means there's a seed in the ground and you're going to grow fruit, and that's what I would do. That's kind of advice that I would get. But also, as a kid making a decision, I think kids also need to make a decision on where God wants them to go, as opposed to where everybody else wants them to go. Because a lot of kids, go to places where they're not even supposed to go. So that's why they struggle a little bit.
And then you're coaching now. What are you coaching? Let the people know what you coach.
I coach football, track, and I love coaching. I actually didn't want to coach. And let me tell you a funny story how I started coaching. I was lifting weights one day, and somebody came up to me and said, "Oh, you played in the NFL?" I said, "Yeah." They're like, "Well, they're looking for a receiver coach at this certain school." I'm like, "Man, I am not coaching. I want to go home, watch just Judy all day." So, they're like, "Please just come out and see what you think." So I went out there. I'm like, "Man, this is all right." But this is what got me hooked. There was a kid on the team that I was mentoring. And as we got done with the season and whatever, we had the banquet. And they get ready to, stop the banquet, this and that. And one of the kids stand up, one of the kids that I was coaching, he stood up with tears in his eyes. And he said, "Can I say something?" I said, "Yeah, man, y'all go ahead and say what you got to say." He grabbed the mic and he said, "Coach Sanders, could you stand up?" And I stood up and he said these words. He said, "Coach Sanders, you're the father figure I've been looking for." And I was done. I said, "Okay, now I know why I coach. Not to just build a football player, but to build men." And when that kid said that, I was like, "Okay, God, you got my attention. So now I know what I'm supposed to do."
These days, I'm sure it's easy to go the other route as far as just building a football player.
Yeah.
Building. Obviously, we're all competitive. We want to win and lose. We want to win and everything, but building young men, especially these days, is ultra important. And what you're doing as far as combining both building an athlete but building men of God, that's definitely important in this day and age.
I mean, it is, because sometimes we wonder why we had to go through so much pain, and why I had to go through so much pain in high school and college and in pros. Is because it's for a purpose. Because how am I going to reach these kids if I've never been through it? I get kids where they ostracize them and say, "You can't make it, and you're this, and you're dumb," and all this stuff that I went through. So now I can understand how they feel to help them walk through it and overcome that adversity. So even though it was painful to go through that adversity and through that pain and all that stuff, but now I understand why I had to go through it, because I can feel how these kids feel.
So a story we told last time that I'm going to bring up again. Chris has been very gracious throughout this entire process, and when I first started talking to him about coming on, we were texting back and forth, and he called me hero in one of the texts. He said, what, I can't remember the exact text, but he's like, "Sure, hero, no problem." And I shared it with these guys, with Ryan and Stefano, and they're like, "Why did he call you hero? Like, what is
right?
Why would he call you? Don't even know him. Why would he say that?
Right?
Is he making fun of you? Is he what's happening?" So, would you tell a story about how you came to start calling people that?
I was because I work at a school called Montgomery Bell Academy, and I'm just walking on campus, and I just call everybody hero. So this on this particular day, one of the teachers walked by, and I said, "Hey, how you doing, my hero?" And she kind of looked at me, and she's like, "Oh, I'm doing good." So about 3 days later, she comes to my house. She comes to my office crying with tears in her eyes. And I said, "Are you okay?" She was like, "No, but I'm doing good now." And the reason why she said that is she said she's been going through cancer for about 1.5 years now. And she just felt down, depressed, and all this stuff. And she said, "When you call me hero, it made me feel like I can overcome anything in my life." So that's why when I go to the gym, when I go to the mall, I'm calling people hero, because you never know, somebody might need an encouraging word that day.
Wow.
And something small like that can make a big difference in some. We think it's insignificant, right? It's just hero, or just saying hi and being sincere, smiling, saying hi,
Right.
can change somebody's day. And you'll hear stories about people who are depressed and planning to commit suicide. And someone told them hi, or someone said, "Hey, I hope you have a good day."
Yep.
And it changes their mind and gets them through that one day, just making it through that one round, making it to the next round.
One more round.
So, Chris, we're going to wrap this up here in a few minutes, but if you would, we're putting you on the spot here. So could you give us one of your inspirational thoughts straight off top of your head?
Oh yeah. Okay, here we go. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. He says, "Trust the Lord with all your heart and don't lean on your own understanding." I don't know if you're going through trials and tribulations. I don't know if you're going through something big in your life, but don't lean on your understanding. Lean on the promises of God, because the promises of God are yes and amen. And another thing I want you to understand also is God has called you to walk in greatness. You know, the Bible says in Genesis 12, he said, I've made your name great. So walk in your authority, walk in your faith, and walk in the abundance that God's called you to be. And another thing I want you to understand is the Bible says this. He says he calls you a royal priesthood. And what does that mean? That means God has called you to walk as a king. God has called you to walk as a queen. So it doesn't matter what society says. It doesn't matter what your friends say. It doesn't matter what the world say. God calls you a king. And what does a king or queen do? It decrees. So when I say what a king or queen does, they decree, that means speak what you want to have in your life. Because the Bible says this, it says death and life is in the power of the tongue. You speak your destiny. You speak your purpose. You speak on what God can do in your life. Because at the end of the day, when you're speaking the promises of God, God said, I can't lie. So when you speak it, you better believe it's going to come to pass. Because if Jesus was King of Kings, Lord of Lords, what does that mean when you come to him? That means you're a king. So walk in your kingship and walk in your queenship.
If you are not pumped up, check your pulse. Something is wrong with you. And that is just a little glimpse of what Chris has on his Facebook page and Instagram page.
Check it out tomorrow because it's going to be fire.
I just have a random one. Who's your favorite active player right now in the NFL?
Actually, it's not a player, it's a coach.
Okay.
I like Frank Wright from the Indianapolis Colts.
Okay.
The reason why I like him is just the way he builds his team.
Yeah.
The way he cares about these players. I mean, he's not one of those coaches cussing people out. When something goes wrong, he just say, let's just keep taking one game at a time. I love what he does. I love what he stands for. I love how he encourages his players, man. So I love him as a coach.
Well, Chris, thanks for being here, man. Thanks for being here twice, even though, most the audience only got one time, but we got two times. But, hey, thanks for doing that. Thanks for the inspiration and the blessing you give people every week and every day as you come across them. And thanks for coming on and sharing some stories with us.
Anytime, man. Invite me on again. Please.
Absolutely.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Hey, look, Skynet. That's what we're going to blame for the first. Y'all know, you know what that is?
Skynet, yes. But I
sounds like something on what is it? What's that called? With Arnold Schwarzenegger.
There you go. I'll be back.
Oh, yes.
Terminator. Yeah, Skynet.
Yeah. Was I right?
You're right. Yep.
Hey, Terminator. There we go.
Yeah. So that's what happened with the first interview. That's why it didn't get recorded. That's what. That's going to be my story.
Nice.
But Chris, thanks so much. We will definitely have you back, and we'll get you live and in person one day, or we'll come down.
I'd love to. Appreciate you guys.
All right. Before we hit the road, Ryan, send us home with the Bible verse.
All right. So I have 2 Timothy 3:13 through 15. And it says, while evil people and impostors will go on from bad to worse, deceiving and being deceived. But as for you, continue in what you have learned and have firmly believed, knowing from whom you learned it and how from childhood you have been acquainted with the sacred writings, which are able to make you wise for salvation through faith in Christ Jesus. That's what I got.
So just like Chris said, God has called us to be great. He's known us from our mother's womb when he knitted us together. You're going to be great one day, and surround yourself with people that will build up your faith so that you can help others as well. So thanks for tuning in. Thank you again, Chris, and we will catch you all again next week on GPS to God. Awesome. If the machines don't take over.
Right. Thanks for listening to GPS to God. Make sure you give us a rating or review on whichever app you happen to use. Also find us on YouTube and be sure to subscribe to our channel.